Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about what are some of the top privacy related cryptocurrencies out there. So today we're going to be taking a look at some of the coolest ones, letting you guys know my thoughts and opinions on some of these, whether they're good investments or good cryptocurrencies overall. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Hey guys, if you like my videos on cryptocurrency, please consider supporting the channel by checking out some of my recommended products. If you use code TOMSPARK on any of these products, you're going to get 10% off. I've reviewed over 65 plus VPN providers and have picked the best one for you guys. Not only that, I've reviewed almost every encrypted email too, and also picked the best one, and you can get a really good price there too. Also, check out Malwarebytes with that link, get a good price, and use the premium plan, and you'll stay safe on your computer to make sure none of your wallet addresses ever get changed when trying to send cryptocurrency around. Anyways, guys, back to the video. So guys, in this video, we're going to be going from which cryptocurrencies are smallest and then going into the biggest ones that have privacy features. Hey guys, really quick, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is simply meant to inform you and entertain you and help you learn about cryptocurrencies. So guys, first up, we're going to be talking about a cryptocurrency called Grin. Now, this website is pretty cool, very minimalist, but as you can see, even from what it says here, it's very experimental and you should use it at your own risk. Now, what is Grin exactly? Well, Grin is kind of like a product of what is called Mimblewimble, which is kind of like a privacy-related blockchain created a couple of years ago, right around 2018's crypto winter. Now, Mimblewimble is actually a pretty cool thing and has even been kind of pushed to be implemented into big cryptocurrencies like Litecoin and Bytecoin, and it is definitely one of the coolest and most scalable ways to do privacy with cryptocurrency. So what makes Grin unique as a cryptocurrency? Well, the fact that it doesn't store any transaction amounts or addresses at all. Now, all the addresses are completely random and they're never used to be the same address, which is much different than Bitcoin, where you can have a wallet and find the amount in that wallet by looking at the address. Now, when Grin first came out a couple years ago, there was a lot of interest, and some people thought it could be Bitcoin 2.0, as this article says, and some estimates of around $100 million went invested into mining the cryptocurrency, but since then, Grin has not been doing well, with such things like declining hash rate, difficulty mining the coin, as well as people just not really using it and having very low transaction amount, which is never a good thing. Not only that, but San Francisco-based Dragon Capital published a research paper 6 months ago. Well, according to this article, this was in 2020, so this must have been sometime in 2019, not too long after it even launched, that there was a huge vulnerability that could reveal 96% of active Grin users. And as of this article was written in 2020, around March, the vulnerability had not been fixed. Apparently, Grin just was not as good as some of the leaders like Monero and Zcash, which have had better track records. According to the people behind Grin, the report contains many logical leaps, and the anomaly exploit is a well-known and documented problem, so the people who made Grin kind of were disputing the fact of this vulnerability. If we're looking at the price of Grin, recently we saw it around 0.25 or around a quarter in November 2020. It did have a really good rise, around 4 times of investment going into January. It reached a high around April 11th of $1.26, which is not a bad return at all. However, since then, Grin has really lost a ton of value, losing almost a sixth of its value, going back down to a quarter, almost just where it started in November. So, am I going to be recommending Grin, and do I think it's a good cryptocurrency to invest in? Well, I don't really think so. Judging based on the past and some of the things, has extremely low trading volume. It doesn't really seem to be that much interest in it. I haven't really even heard of that many people talking about it. It does have that cool, like one of the first Mimblewimble kind of projects, but unfortunately, I don't think it's really that much of a winner. Next up on the list is a project called Beam. Now, this is another token that's actually very similar to Grin in that it's using the Mimblewimble blockchain network. Now, the main differences between Beam and Grin are having to do with the coding, some of the mining stuff, and the token supply. However, that said, in a lot of ways, Beam is not as good as Grin because it is more centralized and kind of headed by Israeli corporate kind of investments. For a lot of people already, that centralization factor is a put-off, even though it could help with some things like speed and stuff like that. I think it has a little bit more of a DeFi play than Grin, so that's kind of interesting, and then some of this stuff going on here. If we take a look at the price chart, though, you could see almost the exact same thing as Grin. It was around a quarter last November. It did reach a pretty good high of $1.62, so it got a little bit higher than Grin. Right around April 11th, man, a lot of them were doing good then. But since then, it's really fallen down a lot at around 0.42. So it's actually held a little bit better than Grin, interestingly enough. But I mean, at the same time, it's still lost a lot of its value. It is a little bit bigger of a cryptocurrency than Grin, which is interesting. Rank 465 compared to 696. Grin has a market cap of 16 million and Beam has a market cap of 39 million, so it's definitely a little bit more successful, but again, not too sure about this one. Next up, guys, we have a cryptocurrency called Bytecoin. This one is pretty interesting because it was actually one of the first private untraceable cryptocurrencies. But the thing about Bytecoin is that I don't really think too much is going on with it anymore. Bytecoin actually was kind of like the foundation of a cryptocurrency called Monero, which you probably have heard of. Monero is actually a fork of Bytecoin. And the thing about Bytecoin that was kind of weird is that they kind of had like all their coins released like at once. If you can see here, the circulating supply, it's like already kind of done, which means that inflation has kind of hurt it. If you look at the charts, you see a lot of kind of weird stuff going on. Let's look at November. We have really small amount here. Saw a decent rise, but a lot of value loss too. It does have a little bit bigger market cap than Beam or Grin, I think, just because it's like history. But a lot of people who like Monero really don't like this one. People think that Bytecoin was made to just kind of enrich a few people, and that Bytecoin hasn't really had that active of development compared to Monero, which Monero has had a lot more improvements over Bytecoin. Next up, we have a cryptocurrency called Verge. This one's interesting because it's not really similar to other cryptocurrencies like Dash and or Monero or anything like that. Instead, it's using stuff like the Onion Router or Tor, as well as I2P or Invisible Internet Protocol to kind of provide that anonymity. It uses things like nodes and peer-to-peer networks to provide this layer of privacy. It claims to be completely anonymous and hide the identities of all the network participants. Now, there are some criticisms I've found of Verge in that it's mostly like hiding the IP layer of people using the network, and it's not really hiding stuff about like the blockchain itself. Some people say it's kind of just like Bitcoin combined with like a weird Tor element. Stuff like Monero has an opaque blockchain, and stuff like Verge apparently doesn't. Overall, I'm not really too sure about the tech on this one. It just seems like it's just kind of bandwagoning on Tor, and I'm not really sure how good the blockchain really is here. That said, Verge has done a little bit better than some of the other projects so far mentioned. That said, it hasn't done that well overall. It's used to be, I think, within the top 100 cryptocurrencies, and since then has continued to fall. And if we look at the charts here, it has had a good rise this year, just like pretty much everything. But also, it hasn't really held its value that well either, falling down by a third, which isn't quite as bad as some of the other things. Like I think Grin had fallen a lot more, from a quarter down, going all the way up here by a factor of 6. And Verge has kind of fallen by a factor of 3, which isn't quite as bad, but still not really that good. When other things like Bitcoin and some of the other ones have fallen by like maybe half or so. So that's definitely something to consider. Overall, not too sure about this one either. Next up on this list is a cryptocurrency called R, or something, a product, a token of the pirate chain. Interesting name, definitely kind of catering to that privacy and kind of pirate audience or whatever. So I've seen this one popping up on the charts actually, so I did get kind of interested in it. It definitely has had some explosive gains this year. If we look at the charts, you could see going into, let's just look at this, it wasn't even barely on the radar. 0.7 cents or 0.07, and then it went all the way up to $13. So if you had invested into this one, you would have made some crazy gains. But since then, going from $13 all the way down to $2 is very, very sad. It's gone down by a factor of 6, just like Grin. There are some interesting things about Pirate. I've found some interesting articles talking about some advantages. So there's an interesting little chart here between Pirate and Monero, saying how Monero uses key ring signatures and ring CT. It shuffles multiple real outputs, and it makes it difficult to analyze the transactions on a blockchain. However, the information is still there to see. However, Pirate claims that it allows only shielded Z transactions on the blockchain, making transactions impossible to follow or analyze, providing complete privacy overall. So it's kind of using a little bit of different technology, and it's claiming that it's just more private and anonymous than even Monero. I found a good post on Reddit with this guy talking about the differences between Monero and R. Well, it kind of has to do with those zero knowledge proofs. The cryptographers at Monero say they eventually might switch to zero knowledge proofs themselves, but they are worried about the scalability of it and critical points of weakness elsewhere. They prefer to have more of a robust all-around castle wall, and the zero knowledge proof implementation will require too many compromises. He's also saying how the ring signatures and that kind of technology that Monero uses is still really, really good and hasn't ever really been cracked. So perhaps Pirate Chain has some advantages with this kind of technology, but there are also cons as well. Suffice to say, I think Pirate Chain is an interesting product. I'm a little worried that the name itself can be a little off-putting to maybe some exchanges that might not want to list something like it. That said, Monero has also had similar issues. As of right now, you could get it on KuCoin, and that's kind of it. Not too many exchanges supporting it. And again, I'm a little worried by how much the value has fallen, and it is kind of a brand new cryptocurrency, not been around too long, and not really proven in my opinion. Definitely promising though, and how they've implemented things, and pretty cool to see. It has a market cap of 125, so still not within the top 100 yet. Next up on the list, we have a cryptocurrency called Horizen or Zen. Now this one is kind of interesting. I'm not really quite sure what to make of it in some ways. It does have some interesting partnerships like with Celsius, which is kind of like a lending platform. It's also supposed to be kind of like a private and decentralized, anonymous kind of way to send money around. I guess it's kind of similar to Bitcoin, except the addresses and stuff like that are hidden, but you could still see the amounts going around. You just don't know who they're going to, which is kind of interesting. The interesting thing about Horizen as well, or Zen, is that if you look at the price, it was around $6 in November, and it went all the way up to around $150, which is probably the most insane rise so far on this list, I think. That's around a gain of 20 or more. So I think that is interesting, definitely. It definitely has seen a loss of value going from around a little bit more than half of its value loss, but that's not too bad. It also is in the top 100. Some interesting things about Zen though is that it just doesn't really have seen that many people talking about it. I've even seen other people talking about, how no one's really talking about this one. If you go to the subreddit itself, it's really dead. No one really is leaving any comments at all, which is kind of weird. I think the main thing with Zen is that it's trying to help businesses as well as developers kind of build public blockchains using their unique sidechain known as Zendo. So it has more of that kind of corporate infrastructure helping privacy be implemented into other things, like I was saying, Celsius. So that's definitely kind of cool. Apparently Horizen also has this mainnet release for Zendo, which is releasing in Q3 of 2021, so that could see an increase in price later on this year. There have also been some other partnerships, like with Stakehound, which is a liquid staking platform that allows Zen investors to participate and benefit from Ethereum-based DeFi platforms. So that's pretty cool as well. I think this one definitely shows some interesting promise, especially with its DeFi integrations and stuff like that, and kind of attaching to other products and kind of helping them. That could be one reason why we saw such an explosion in price this year, and I think it definitely has some potential, but it's a little bit different, I think, than some of the other cryptocurrencies we've been talking about. Stuff where they're like more based strictly around that privacy and sending it around and stuff like that. A little bit different there, but I think it does have some interesting ideas here. We'll have to see, how it goes back up, if it will reach its all-time highs. Definitely, if you had gotten in here, that would have been an amazing investment. Next up, we're going to be talking about a cryptocurrency called Zcash, and Zcash was definitely one of the first currencies that kind of got popular as a privacy-based token, and you can even see that here from the max. If you look at it from 2016, it was as high as $3,200, and now it is a far cry from that, around $120. If we look at the yearly price, we can see from November it was around 53 bucks. And it had a gain of 6 times, which isn't bad. Since then, it's lost a third of its value, which isn't too good. Now, Zcash is kind of interesting because a lot of the community doesn't really like it anymore, like it used to have this huge support. There seemed to be some kind of issue with the GPU miners being abandoned by the person in charge of the network. So that kind of burned a lot of bridges, it seems like that. This guy says, ever since that day, the price has pretty much dropped 90% as the community felt betrayed and sold out and left for better projects. So that's something to consider. Also, another thing is that Zcash transactions aren't always private. It's something that has to opt in. And, you know, it could be only as low as 2% of transactions on Zcash are private, according to this guy talking about it. And that could make you stand out when using those private transactions on the Zcash. Additionally, it seems like this guy is saying 20% of the newly created coins go directly to the wallet of a private US company. That doesn't seem very decentralized to this guy, and me neither. Looking into that, though, it seems like a company that supports the development of Zcash announced their community had voted to distribute 20% of the network mining rewards to infrastructure and marketing development. So it doesn't seem like something that nefarious. That said, overall, while Zcash has some interesting technology like zero knowledge proofs and stuff like that, some people think that the pirate chain has like better implementation and more kind of a modern spin on the technology here. And I also just think these charts, man, are brutal to look at. I don't think Zcash is ever going to be going up to here. Whoever invested here probably, like that guy was saying, it seems like a lot of people left. Look at this. From December, pretty much in at this point in December, like this, the cryptocurrency market hadn't even crashed yet. And if you look at the price here, like it literally completely got nuked into oblivion, which is not a good sign. We have seen some pretty good rises here. And this year it's been decent. I mean, if you invested around here for 50 bucks and it went up here, that's decent. But again, I'm not too sure about this one. Next up, we have a cryptocurrency called Dash. This one is interesting because it's kind of like has that privacy feature by sending money privately. It's like an option, but it also kind of has like this PayPal-y kind of component where it's more about sending money really cheap and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at the website itself, it seemed to kind of brand itself more that way. If we look at the kind of markets here with Dash, it's kind of a similar story as with Zcash. Dash is actually one of the older cryptocurrencies for sure, being around here way at the beginning, as you could see. But just like Zcash, Dash has had kind of a troubled history with pricing. It was used to be priced around, you know, a peak of like $1,200. This year it's gone to around like $400. So it hasn't really ever reclaimed that height, and I don't think that's really a good sign necessarily in terms of how strong the cryptocurrency is overall, seeing it only go down in market cap as well as time has gone on. This November it was around $66 and it went up to around $440 and it's back down to $120. So it's definitely lost around a fourth of its value throughout this kind of cycle this year. Gone up a decent amount though for anyone who was investing at the ground floor. That said, as you can see here, it's kind of been a steady decline for Dash, so that's kind of disappointing. The good thing about Dash though, it is accepted in a lot of exchanges, which is kind of one of the good things about it. So overall, a decent option, especially if you want to send money more and have a private option to do so. Next up on the list is Monero. Monero is definitely the biggest privacy and anonymity coin there is. It kind of has that brand value to it. Everybody who is into privacy and stuff like that with cryptocurrency knows about Monero. It's definitely one of the oldest ones. Like I was saying, it's kind of like a fork of that Bytecoin without having the coins already released. So there was a better kind of tokenomics there with this one. Now, Monero has been interesting because, during the last bull run, if you look at the cycle, it had gone absolutely apeshit. Pretty similar to Litecoin, actually. They have a pretty similar kind of history, going from, as low as like $1 to like $400. Yeah, so if you had invested in Monero then, you were rich AF. So this one had a really good rise then. This year it's had a decent rise. Going back in November, we see the price around $120 and it's gone up to $440. However, compared to some of the other options on this list, it's just held its value better. It may not have as crazy of a rise, around four times, but it's also held its value much better, going down only half. And that makes sense because it does have a bigger market cap and a higher rank here in terms of how much money is invested, how much transactions are moving around, stuff like that. So Monero definitely is one of the best cryptocurrencies in terms of anonymity and privacy. It uses all sorts of things like ring signatures and stuff like stealth addresses. So it's really easy to conceal the amount being sent as well as who is receiving it. That said, while Monero hasn't had as explosive as a rise as some of the other cryptocurrencies on this list, I do think it probably has had the best adoption and kind of bullish signals. If we take a look at some of these articles like this, Monero has had really good updates and things coming out for it soon, like atomic swaps. Being able to trade Bitcoin for Monero would be huge for privacy, anonymity, and stuff like that. Not only that, but Monero also has had announcements with stuff like Thorchain, a cross-chain decentralized liquidity network, or Rune, which is a pretty big currency. So that's really cool. Having the ability to book flights and stuff like that on Chavala. Having that strength and recognition is definitely a huge selling point. I think out of all the cryptocurrencies so far we talked about, Monero probably will hold its value the best and probably have the best chances for the future in terms of holding its market cap and staying around. I think it probably will stay the most popular and successful private kind of cryptocurrency like this. Now, I'm not sure too much about where it's going to go. At the end of this year, could it go up to 1,000? Who knows? Can it go back to 400? Who really knows? I just know that it's probably going to stick around and continue to be adopted and have probably a boost in the price at some point, and it's going to have more adoption and stuff like that. The bad thing about Monero is that it does kind of have that reputation for being kind of like the criminal's currency, if that makes sense. A lot of people associate it with criminal activity. There's a lot of FUD about that. So it's definitely a hindrance there with adoption, I think, and it's always going to hurt it, and it could possibly make it it would kind of squash its momentum in terms of price increases. Not only that, but it's also not on some major exchanges like Coinbase and stuff like that. Who knows when it will ever be added there. It's definitely one of those currencies that's kind of hard to trade around because of that, hard to sell it, and you do kind of have to know your way around the different kind of markets and stuff like that to sell it. You could kind of shapeshift it and stuff like that around, and maybe the stuff like atomic swaps coming out will be huge for it as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Now, number one on the list is going to be Litecoin, and you might be wondering, why is Litecoin on this list? That's not an anonymous or private currency, and you're right, as of now. Later on in the year, Litecoin is going to be implementing Mimblewimble. And if you remember Grin, one of the first projects that had implemented Mimblewimble, Litecoin and Bitcoin were, people were thinking, why can't these currencies implement that Mimblewimble blockchain network to make transactions more private if people want to do that? So Litecoin is implementing that later on this year, and it had given Litecoin a pretty good bull run this year, going from around $50 or so in November, $60, all the way up to $377. So quite a good run there. However, Litecoin has always had trouble sticking to its big price. It always goes up really fast. It takes a while to do so as well, and then it will drop down quickly. It follows Bitcoin and usually doesn't go as high as Bitcoin, and it's definitely lost its place as one of the forefront of cryptocurrency's most valued projects. When Litecoin was around in the inception, it was like the number 2 cryptocurrency for a long time, one of the oldest ones, right alongside Bitcoin. And in my opinion, it's never really regained that kind of recognition. Litecoin has only slipped down in terms of market cap, which is disappointing. It's kind of just been known as a little bit faster to use Bitcoin, and that's essentially what it is. So the fact that it's having Mimblewimble implemented here is a really cool thing, I think, and it's gonna make it definitely a strong contender for one of the best privacy coins, alongside something like Monero. It's definitely gonna be super scalable, it's fast, it's trusted, and it's on tons and tons of exchanges. So that is probably one of the best things about Litecoin. And when it has that privacy component, it's gonna be pretty cool. You're gonna be able to buy it anywhere. A lot of investors are kind of interested in Litecoin for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, because we haven't seen the same level of returns. And like I said, it always goes down so quickly and takes a while to go up. You know, stuff like Grayscale investments are interested in this. Some of the exchanges that are open start accepting Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and stuff like Stellar maybe. I think there's one in Japan just did that, so they picked like 5 and Litecoin was one of them. Not only that, but stuff like PayPal picked Litecoin when they didn't pick barely anything else, maybe like Ethereum and Bitcoin. So it definitely has that like recognition factor still, even though it's definitely slipped down from where it used to be. So it'll be interesting to see if Mimblewimble makes Litecoin more valued. I think it will probably stay more valued than Monero, and when it has that privacy component, it could give Monero some pretty good competition, especially considering Dash and Zcash are quite a bit behind Monero in terms of that market cap. Anyways, guys, those are my list of the most private and anonymous cryptocurrencies out there. As you saw, a lot of them kind of have, you know, I don't know if they're the best investments, to be honest. Some of them, though, I think are pretty promising and could be good investments if you really like supporting privacy-related cryptocurrencies. I think stuff like Horizen Zen provides interesting avenues for kind of corporate integration of privacy and anonymity and stuff like that, especially, and we've seen decent price movements there and not too much of a pullback. However, other ones like Dash and Zcash, sometimes I feel like they've kind of seen their day in the sun and probably won't regain their former price point. Going back up to $3,000 or $6,000 just doesn't seem likely to me. And I think these coins are going to have a hard time competing with stuff like Monero, which is just getting more adoption. And it just has such a big community, a cult community behind it. So many people love Monero. And stuff like Litecoin being accepted pretty much everywhere and having that privacy component, it's going to be hard to compete there. Anyways, guys, those are just my thoughts and opinions, not financial advice. So thanks for coming to this video and checking out. And let me know down in the comments down below what your favorite kind of anonymous or private cryptocurrency is. And I'll see you in the next video very soon.